Okay, this is VR Body, and it should help you get a body or an avatar into your mobile VR game quickly and easily so that when you look around, the body follows, and when you walk, he steps, and you can even look down and upside down, like in this direction, all the way upside down, which is a really hard angle to do. So, it's hard to notice, but another thing this does is, you're going to notice when I look over to the left, I'm kind of looking over my left shoulder, and what is happening is my eyes have moved over my left shoulder, and when I look to the right, my eyes are all the way over here to the right shoulder. And that's not happening by default with a VR camera. It just rotates basically at the center of the head at 0, 0, 0, but it doesn't move like our eyes actually move as I move my head around. And so I tried to demonstrate that easily in the documentation here. So you'll see that, traditionally the VR camera would be here at 0, 0, 0, essentially the center of the head or the top of the spine. And the eyeball position is offset just a little bit, but it's offset maybe by 2 or 3 inches. And when I look this way and this way, my eyes are not sitting in one position. They're actually moving their position, and that has not been accounted for in mobile VR yet, in anything that I've seen. So maybe this can help with motion sickness, because I thought maybe when I move my head and my eyeballs actually move, but the camera in VR is sitting at a position of 0, 0, 0, essentially in the middle of the skull, and it's just rotating when I turn my head. It's not taking into account the subtle movements, for instance, from this position right here to this position right here. The camera isn't being moved this distance. It's sitting in the middle at this point. And so maybe this could help with motion sickness. So in addition to just adding a body into VR, this simulates the camera movement as you move your head around. And so if we look in the documentation again, there's a couple different ways you can do movement. One is just to move the camera around on the X and the Z axis, which ends up being a circle like this as I turn my head. Or you can do full 3D movement, which means that the camera is going to move essentially on a sphere or an oval based on how you set up the perimeters here. It's going to move in a sphere or an oval around the head, so that when I'm looking up, the camera actually moves up, and when I look down, the camera actually moves down. So that again is demonstrated right here. You'll see when the user's looking straight ahead, the camera is at a Y position of 0 or negative 0.1, and when they look up, the camera has moved up to a 0.2. So there's a couple different ways to use the assets, and hopefully it helps make some cool VR games. So let me get a brand new empty project and add this to a new character, to a custom character. Okay, so I have a brand new Unity scene. I'm just going to create a plane so that there's a ground. And it's important to have a VR main object, which represents the VR player. And the main camera is a child, and its position is at 0, 0, 0, and its rotation is at 0, 0, 0. The VR main can be moved, but the main camera needs to be 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So now that we have the VR main set up, and I'm just going to follow along in the documentation. I've already created the VR main, And I made sure that it has the tag of main camera on the camera. Okay, now we're ready to add a 3D model to the scene. So I'm just going to grab a model from the asset store. Okay, and I'm going to add this character to the scene. And he should be about a height of 2. And so I could see that this is too small. I'm just going to make his scale bigger to 2. Because he was only about a height of 1. And then go ahead and import this package if that hasn't been done yet. And then just a quick note, because I already have my own character, I won't need the materials from the demo or the model or the scene. But I want to use the auto walk and the mouse look script. And those are part of the demo. So I'm going to include those 2 scripts. And I also didn't need to import the textures there. Okay. So from the demo, I just got the auto walk and the mouse look script. And the mouse look script can be applied to the main camera. And the auto walk can be applied to the character. And then I'll need to adjust the character controller so it fits properly. Okay, now we're ready to add the VR body script to the player. So when you first add it, the head movement is set to none, which means the head is just going to stay at 0, 0, 0. And I'm getting some errors here. Please assign a game object to the field VR main object, which is right here. So this is the VR main. That is the parent of the main camera. So now that's been assigned, I'm going to clear the errors and hit play again. It says the animation controller is not VR body anim controller. So assign that to the animation controller. That's right here. So if I go into the VR body animations controller folder, I can drag that animation controller onto my animator and hit play. And I'm going to notice that it's going back to this freehand controller that came with my model. And that must be happening from some of these scripts that the model came with. So I'm just going to remove the scripts that were on that model because they came on that model and I didn't add them. So now that that's done, I have my VR body anim controller added and I hit play. Okay, my errors should go away. But my model's not animating, and that's because this model from the asset store hasn't been set to a humanoid avatar. So we're going to create one from this model. And it looks like that's okay. So now that it has a humanoid avatar, it should work with Mecanum. So right now I can see the body's added and the rotation's working. And I can walk, but it looks pretty bad because it has no head movement, or actually this should be camera movement set. So if I look into the scene, you'll see that the camera is set just right at the middle of the head. And this is default mobile VR camera setup. And again, when I look to the left and the right, none of that's happening. So I need to switch to the 2D. That will, as you can see, it's added a ring up here in purple. And I'm going to switch my gizmos and just turn off 3D icons so it's easier to see what's going on here. Now, because I've turned on 2D, there's two-dimensional tracking that's going around the head, just like this. And the camera is not moving on the y-axis when I move my head up and down. So you'll see that if I look forward and I move my head up, the camera is in front of me, and if I look down, it's pretty much in the same exact position here. And then if I go ahead and rotate, the camera's going to move over here, so it's accounted for that movement. Now, if you want to get full 3D tracking, you turn this one on, and then you get the yellow adjustment. And again, any of these can be adjusted with these controls. The yellow adjusts the Y, which is the height offset. So this is now when I look up, you're going to notice that the camera, and it's drawing a line to basically the center of the head position that you've set here. So when I look up, the camera has gone up, and when I look down, the camera will go down. So it's following what's actually happening with my real eyes. And so for the controls here, you can adjust how far the camera goes up and down with the yellow control. That is the camera offset Y. So you're going to notice if I'm looking straight down and I move this, the camera goes further down. So maybe it'll make some motion sickness if the camera's moving too much and we need to reduce just the Y or the X and the Z value. Because I noticed that if I look to the left and to the right, it seems like my eyes travel farther than when I look up and down again. So here's left to the right, and so about this far. And then when I look up and down, that's about this far. So it seems like your eyes travel less on the Y position when you're looking up and down than they travel further on the X and the Z axis when you're looking around. So you can adjust it to the two different values how you want. This one is adjusting how far it's going away on the X and the Z axis from the center of the head. This one is the height offset, which is how far off the ground the camera goes. So that should be about at the eyeball level, which is the purple ring. So there it is at the eyeball level. And the yellow one is, again, how far the camera is allowed to move up and down, which probably is a smaller value than the X and the Z. So in the end, instead of having a sphere that's going around the head like it shows here, you're probably going to end up with a maybe more of an oval shaped that's shaped like this. But play with the different values and see what works best for your game. Another thing you can try to do is get the camera far enough away so that you can't see into the body. Now here I need to set the main camera's near clipping plane to a little bit closer to 0.02 or 0.01 or 0.1 or 0.2. So here's 3, 2, and 1. And if I look down a little bit more, it should be more obvious. Okay, so everything's set up and working. Let's just go through some of the variables here on the script. So the first one is show editor controls. That just toggles these three controls up here, the white arrow that moves up and down, and then these two controls on the yellow and purple. That's for these three values right here: camera offset, XC, Y, and camera height offset. So if you get everything configured, you can go ahead and toggle those off so you don't have to see them or accidentally click on them. And Then the VR main object, of course, is the parent of the main camera. Rotate when moving. So this rotates the body while you're moving. So right now, if I walk and I rotate, it rotates while I'm moving. But if you're using a waypoint system, like you click on a waypoint and then you move to it, while that move was happening, if I were to look around, you wouldn't want the body to turn because the body's going to continue to walk towards the waypoint, and it would just be the head rotating while you were moving. So if you're using waypoints, you probably want to toggle this off. And then there's turn animation when moving, and let me just turn that on to show when I'm walking. It's kind of hard to see with this character, or I need to increase the XZ offset so I can see my legs a little bit better. But while I'm walking, I don't want it to play a turn animation because while the legs are moving, you don't really play that turn animation. You just kind of change the direction that you're walking. So this turns off the left and the right turn animation while you are moving. Okay, so the offset XZ, I think I've covered that pretty well already. It's the purple ring here. It's how far away from the center of the head the camera will be. And that's easier to see if you're looking straight ahead. And much easier to see if you're just using the two-dimensional tracking, because then the camera just goes around that ring. And then the offset Y, again, how far it's allowed to move up and down. The height offset, of course, is where the camera's at from the player's feet. So we should line that up with the eyes. And then you have the body turn angle when you're idle. And that is when I'm standing and I look to the left and the right. There's a certain angle. It's not full 90 degrees because 90 degrees is about here and 90 degrees is about here. But it's more like, 75 degrees or something that I naturally turn my head before I would then pick up my feet and make a turn. So you can see I can turn my head without the body moving. And that's what this angle is. So if I decrease it to 30, you're going to see that when I turn the head, it's going to do a rotation a lot quicker. And if I increase it up to like 90, I'm going to be able to go way over my shoulder before a turn happens. And this is the same value except for when you're moving. Because when you're moving, if you had that up at like 60, okay. So if I'm moving, you kind of want that angle to be pretty small. Because while you're moving, you pretty much want the body to follow where you're looking. Okay, so for this last one, walk animation speed, I did bring in the material for the floor, so it's easier to see what's going on. And when I walk, and I need to move the camera offset just a little bit here. So when I walk and I look at my feet, you'll see that it looks like my feet are sliding on the ground. And so this changes the animation speed of the walk. So first of all, let me make this plane a lot bigger. And so I have some walking room. And then let me look down. And I'll see it looks like my feet are kind of sliding. So if I adjust this to 2, that looks a lot better. And 3. And then if I want to get really picky, I could pause it and look at a look at a mark like this line or something that the foot's at and make sure that it moves the same with the foot. I can see that this mark here and the foot are staying the same distance apart from each other. So that looks pretty good. And I see that's a walk animation speed value of 3. So if I stop play mode, I'll have to set that again and make my plane bigger. But now we should have a pretty good looking setup. So I can walk backwards, forwards. I can walk around, stop. The body follows me wherever I look. All right, well, this looks good to me, so I hope this helps you out a lot. And remember, if you like the asset and it helps you, give it a good rating on the asset store because that really helps us out a lot. So, anyways, thanks for checking it out. Looking forward to some cool VR experiences. And maybe it will help motion sickness. Who knows? Maybe it will make it worse. I don't know.